Okay. So we'll start talking about meeting stuff. The topic today is going to be glassware. I'm drinking JP Beerley of Beerley Brewing's Felix Pilsner in a Pilsner glass, scientifically designed for Pilsners. It's the standard glass. First things first, I wanted to talk to you guys about just kind of club-related stuff. The NHC thing went really well. My beer advanced, which I was very excited and surprised by. Kale's beer came awfully close. He had a pretty good score in 31A. What was your score? You said 31 or 34 or somewhere in there, Kale? Kale's froze up.
I'm sorry, you're kind of breaking out. What did you say?
Oh, I was talking about your score at NHC. You had a good score.
Yeah. It ended up with 34 as my score, which for my first entry, I was pretty proud of the beer and I was pretty happy with the way it turned out. And I feel like it said I was second place within like however they do the
flight.
The flight. And
just so you know, that's position within the flight. So I think I believe that's where you were in the order. So that way you can tell, like, they can trace back, and it's like, oh, that's the third beer that we drank in that flight, so they can refer back to it.
The comments, I didn't post a score sheets up or anything like that, but they had nothing but good comments. The only thing that got me, I think, was is it a Vienna lager, and the color of mine was really golden and clear, and I think they were looking for a little bit more of an amber color to a Vienna lager, which I guess is my bad for not really focusing on details, right? But I thought it was really good. I think I might have just missed maybe being outside the top three.
I think you were, because that category is a one that gets condensed. There's a lot of other categories that we get thrown in there with, like clone beers and things like that. But I know that the third place girl, we talked about this, is a gluten-free brewer. She's not part of Zero Tolerance, but she follows us on Instagram, and she goes by the Brew Babe. And she's a gluten-free brewer. She usually does ciders, but she's been trying beers lately. And I'm like, just join the club. And she's like, oh, I don't think I'm good enough yet. And it's like, that's what the club is for. Like, we get each other good. But she got third place. Like, that was really good. So, and I think that was her first time entering as well. Oh, Kale's got a guest.
Oh, well, hey, this is...
That meeting is already outpacing the groundbreaker attendance.
Yeah, so... hey, Joe.
Hi.
There, this is Dina. Hi. She is brand new.
Hello. Nice. Nice to meet you.
Visitor. Awesome. So welcome. Yeah.
I brought my beer.
Oh, cool. All right.
Oh, cool. You guys can share beers.
Beers.
Do you have any questions
about the beers? Just let me know.
We're trying to mute you for a sec. Sorry. Mute ourselves.
Thank you. Should I?
Did you bring homebrew to the meeting, Kale?
You can pop on this side.
Yeah, that's good. Let's do this. I can move.
That was salty.
Hey, Kale, did you bring homebrew to the meeting?
I did. I brought my last Vienna lager.
Nice.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, so some other club stuff I wanted to talk about was this summer, Oregon's, I don't know if you guys saw this conversation as it took place on the club page, but the Oregon State Fair, their coordinator is going to create a specialty category dedicated gluten-free so that we don't have to deal with the 31A alternative grains, alternative fermentables type of thing. That guy, his name is Chris or Chad Hummert. He was trying to run for the governing body of the AHA, and he got real excited that we were interested in having. Put on a shirt, Bob. It's going on YouTube, buddy.
No, he's just showing off.
That looks like the chiseled chest of a former Division I water polo player. He's on mute. So we
Yeah, we'll call it Division I. That's what we'll call it.
so we were invited to enter our gluten-free beers into a dedicated category for the Oregon State Fair. And as far as I know, you don't have to be an Oregon resident to enter the state fair, just like you don't for many of the other states that people enter. So it would be great for us to make full use of that category so that we can show the BJCP, like, hey, we overloaded that category and had great beers whenever presented with the opportunity. So
you're gonna make me bottle more beers? Oh.
You're gonna have to bottle more beers, and you're gonna have to ship them to Oregon fresh. So I'm hoping that we can really spam that category with zero tolerance beers, and you know, just somebody's making the effort to give us our own category. We need to repay them by showing that we can produce some good beers. And then I talked to Jesse and James, because it's been a year since the last Groundbreaker Pacific Northwest homebrew competition, and they said that they're going to do it again. They had a couple of employees have kids, so they're a little maxed out with the 2 new babies being born. But once they start getting back to work and having some other obligations met, then they're going to have another Pacific Northwest gluten-free homebrewing competition. So be looking out for that. And then that was the competition stuff I wanted to talk about. Still need, if anybody's interested in helping write up a BJCP,
Right.
like a subcategory describer, that'd be helpful. And I can lend a hand to it as well. But I think if we write that thing up, we might have a better chance of getting our own category if we take it upon ourselves to write it up. Anything else before I launch into PowerPoint?
What kind of things are we talking about? Like, are we talking about, like, are we sure we just want one category, or are we trying to potentially give ourselves potentially more categories?
I would think that, so there's been kind of 2 approaches that people have brought up. Either do like, make a designated, dedicated, gluten-free category under which we compete, or maybe try to get a subcategory beneath each of the categories. But I think that might get a little bit noisier. We also have to think about what we could fill.
Well, here's the thing, is that there's people that will use sorghum, and I think that they just their own category. I think sorghum beer should be its own category.
Wonderful quality.
Yeah,
What,
it's,
what kind of greens are you using?
so that one is like a lot of,
Mute. Go on mute.
Can you mute, Cal?
yeah.
Thank you. So I think that we could, you know, definitely we could talk about that. I don't know if it's a problem for sorghum beers to battle against millet beers.
Well, it's like, the thing is like you're going an extract versus a malt beer usually, and so that's where I'm saying, like, that's where, like, yeah, you can put an extract beer in, you know, a highly contentious category and maybe do well, but also there's this aspect where I feel like sorghum really does elicit a different taste. So it's like completely different from millet. So it's really hard to define a category when you're dealing with such a vast, like you've seen the last 2 articles that I've written, like there's more gluten-free grains than gluten-containing grains. So I mean, just like the vast, like, difference of flavor like combinations and differences is just massive between all the grains.
Okay, but yeah, I also don't think that there should be a buckwheat subcategory versus a rice subcategory versus a sorghum subcategory versus, you know, I think that the 2 key things here are we need to be able to fill categories, and we need to be able to be reasonably assured that if our people volunteer to judge that category, they're not going to consume gluten-containing ingredients. Because I think a big part of what we need to do is present it as it is a barrier for entry for us to participate in BJCP judging because we can't drink 100% of the categories right now.
Right. Well, I mean, the meads and the ciders.
Yeah, the meads and the ciders. If the yeast is not a problem, and people definitely are malting ciders and
True.
doing things like that. So I think that if we push for maybe a foot in the door, get a gluten-free beer. This beer contains no gluten-containing ingredients. Everything that's here is derived from non-gluten-containing ingredients. It can be a Pilsner. It can represent any classic style or no classic style. And just sort of push for it to be almost a specialty, but definitely its own specialty category where we're not having to go up against any barley wheat or rye beers. Because right now we can't enter any of our beers anywhere that we don't have to compete against barley wheat and rye. And we can't judge 31A, which is the only 31A and 31B are the only categories that call out gluten-free, and we can't participate in judging our own category.
True. No, I agree. So yeah, I think there's something that has to be done. I just think that so I'm not trying to mansplain here, but so as a recruiter, I've actually been salary explained to recently by women about how they feel that they need to negotiate. They normally wouldn't, but they feel like they should because they know that there's a glass ceiling, and I appreciate that. As a recruiter, it's like, wow, this is a breath of fresh air to actually hear this being said so straight up and so blatantly to me. I appreciate that. I will do whatever I can to go to back. And so there's this aspect where it's like, if this is potentially like our one chance in the next 5 years to get a category, I say that there could be something more potentially there for us. And they put, like, if they're opening their arms, they could be wider than we expect.
All right. I also think that sorghum absolutely can compete against all grain gluten-free beers. I think you see it with the medals hanging behind the bar of the place where I am. They've got more of them than anybody else, and they brew with sorghum all the time. So I don't think that it's like there needs to be sorghum can't hold its own type of mentality. There's not a glass ceiling for sorghum. I mean, it can compete and does win against these other beers all the time. So I think that it can definitely hold its own. But yeah, I mean, if you want to write up a sorghum category versus a, all grain gluten-free category, that would be something to consider as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it does elicit its own flavors in
what do you do about
a
partial
different way than say. Yeah. Well, I mean,
or
that's
extract
interesting.
with grains.
I guess you're right. I mean, because you can blend them all. Some of the best beers have them all in them. So
yeah, so it's all stuff to consider, and we should probably start to abstract a couple of them.
Yeah,
so,
I think it's worth doing at least just a write-up to see what we can put to specific grains and just like what people's understanding of these grains, at least in our community, looks like. Yeah.
Well, would it be worthwhile having like an extracts only category? Because usually those kind of taste differently.
Well, it's hard to get like millet extract or buckwheat extract, right? You can find rice and millet and tapioca, like if you look hard enough, and certain other extracts, but I feel like that
always tastes a little lighter to me, at least.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, like, but there's things you can do to make it feel more with more body. We've talked about that in the group and stuff like
Anytime
that.
I use sorghum, I'm partial mashing, so I'm gonna get you cover up a bit of the twang and you get the other flavors out of the grains. So
yeah,
like you say, a lot of the breweries they do. A lot of extract and just adding grains and beans to
Ghostfish too. Yeah, Ghostfish uses a lot of sorghum.
Yeah.
So
or rice even. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So,
but I think you definitely can like get your foot in the door. Like,
I don't.
American IPA became a category, and now there's like 7 different American or specialty IPA categories. And, up to and now including the New England one. Like. So definitely, it's not like you get your one shot and then it's done.
How many people are we thinking are going to enter into these contests?
That's the thing is we need to prove it first and foremost, when we get an opportunity like the Oregon State Fair, like there were only 10 entries or 10 people entered beers into Groundbreakers competition last year, or 11. Like that's not enough. You know, when we get these opportunities where somebody's holding a whole entire level playing field for us, we need to make sure that we're putting beers in.
Yeah.
So,
that's where I was like, I don't think you could do an all rice, like, you know, an all rice lager category. Like, that's cool, but yeah, I don't think you're
gonna get one, you know, one dude's gonna do it, you know.
How many? Do you know how many like free brews they had submitted for BrewCon, or do we know from our club how many people submitted?
Yeah, I think it was just Yumi and Stuart from everything I've seen. Out of 510 people, I think it was Yumi and Stuart. Oh, and Bob, sorry. Bob and Dom put a beer or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so that's the thing is like, so I guess the reason why I say that it might be worth bringing up other stuff is because of the reason why you say the specialty IPA aspect, right? Is that, you know, like, I can't more than one beer into a category in it by BJCP safety usually in like big competitions.
Yeah, if BJCP, you can only enter one into each subcategory.
So like I would still be entering a gluten-free beer into a regular category because I literally brew so much. I usually have 2 or 3 beers to like, well, I'll take the best at that time. Right,
and we'll probably still have alternative grains, alternative fermentables. We're not talking about getting rid of that category or taking it away from people who do rye Dunkel Bisons or whatever.
What about updating it? Like maybe there's the fact that we could do like a gluten-free IPA category because you know, like the whole root thing. Like that
comes back to the more we spread out these categories, the fewer they're gonna. God, it's so loud. The more that we have categories, the more we're spreading ourselves thin, you know, like.
I just still think it's hard to judge a lager against an IPA. I just really feel like if you're using 2 different kinds of yeast, it's hard to judge the same beer in the same category. That's what I mean. I think there's enough people in our club that would brew a gluten-free IPA, and there's enough people that would brew a different style. I would totally put a lager up against a stout because they are themselves just like in this aspect of non-hoppy beers. You could do that potentially, and you could pick out flaws in each of those beers and figure out which one's the best between the two. But it's really hard when you have like 23 different IPAs and then you get to the stout, and by that point you have palate fatigue. That's why I'm saying it's just really hard to do that in that category, even with 23 beers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's a perfect solution to this other than everybody brews enough gluten-free beers to fill out a BJCP style guide with gluten-free beers in competition. Like,
well,
for Groundbreakers Pacific Northwest homebrew competition to get big enough that they're filling out, 36 categories.
Well, maybe we got to do that in another club meeting, like how to package your beers so that you can ship them and that it'll still like maintain the integrity kind of thing. Like, because I got second place and I shipped it from California, so it's like, I mean, I'm not necessarily the furthest away, but like I still think it can be done, and therefore I think that it's at least worth potentially bringing more education to it for the members that maybe have been in it but haven't necessarily gone through with it.
Yep.
So, and then I'd like to add a note because I know you're going to go into a little bit more, but I wanted to add a note about hop creep for end of meeting discussion, unless you'd rather go over that right now.
I'm sorry, for what?
Have you heard of hop creep?
No.
So hop creep is where you have an amylase still in your mash tun, and then you add a dry hop, and then the yeast starts chewing on the actual hop material and hop sugars, and then releases a chemical known as diacetyl and ruins your beer. We experienced it on Friday at Skyland Ale Works, actually. with a beer that was a brewed IPA that he had brewed to be on tap in his regular barley brewery. But since he was diagnosed celiac, he brewed a beer recently, and we had it, and it was to the point of, you know, there was a question about the decision to put it on tap.
So the problem you're talking about is he dry hopped it during active fermentation, and it fouled the flavor with diacetyl.
No, he was single vessel. Yeah, so after primary he dry hopped it, but he had added a Milo 300 to the ferment to get it to be a brewed IPA, because he had used USO5, which usually finishes at about 2.5 to 3 Plato. So it finished it like, I mean, in terms of standard gravity, it finished at 0.996, right? Or something, 0.0996 or something like that, right? So below water, right? So it definitely hit the brute status, but he had used the new hop Lotus at as basically the only hop in the boil, but it was a Whirlpool hop. So it was the only Whirlpool hop, dried the beer out, but as a result of adding about like a half pound to a 10-gallon batch of dry hop at like 68 degrees, it kickstarted fermentation again. And then within 2 or 3 days, he cold crashed it, but hadn't released all the diacetyl as a result of the yeast kicking back up. So it basically was like the biggest butterball, like butterscotch, popcorn, literally, like even had a soap vibe to it as well. The grist had been primarily millet, rice, and buckwheat, and it was tough. It was tough to drink. I couldn't finish the second beer.
Would a diacetyl rest not have fixed that?
So the thing is he had dry hopped it at regular fermentation temperatures. So that's the thing. That's where he was trying to.
But then you said he cold crashed it. He had started a second fermentation off his.
I mean, that's all that we can think of it. I mean, also, I think that what I learned from him is that his water profile in Corona, California, is a little bit more alkaline. So I'm considering that maybe he didn't add enough citric acid. Maybe he had enough for barley, but didn't add enough to compensate for the fact that millet and buckwheat and some of these other grains are a little bit higher in pH as well. So that's where I was thinking that maybe that soapy taste came off of the alkaline vibe, that the fermentation maybe fermenting under alkaline conditions maybe caused a soapy taste to the beer.
Which hops was it? Some of them have a soapy like sensation.
Lotus. Have you? I haven't worked with Lotus before, so I actually don't really have any.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's a new hop by Hopsteiner. So he was about to contract 220 pounds of it, and after this beer, I don't think he's going to do it. But there's been a couple different hops each year apparently, according to Jim, that have had hop creep. Like Centennial was one year, Mosaic was another year, Cascade was another year. So it just like kind of, I guess it shifts between.
I get soapy off of Centennial a lot, and I think it's pretty common. It's got like a cilantro soapiness to it that,
right,
you know, people identify, and it's, you know, I don't worry too much about that. That's part of floral, you know, like.
Right. True. So, yeah, so it was just interesting that, like, you know, I don't know if any other brewers in this space have had it, but, you know, it's
yeah, I don't normally add amylase enzymes after fermentation.
True. And so there's this interesting aspect where, like, you know, on the commercial IPA that I make, we do that actually, because we've had to get it to the right ABV to be at the legal, like where we've set our, like, you know, if we say 6.8, it has to be within 0.2 of that, or we're definitely breaking the law in that scenario. So, there's aspects where the beer has started at between 13.6 and 14.6 Plato. So between those different scenarios, you're finishing at either you have to finish at 0 Plato or 2 Plato in order to get to where the beer needs to be. So we've done it a couple times actually, and I've never had that experience with the hops that we've used. Yeah, we have not experienced hop creep, and so that was, I think, the thing that was interesting is that maybe it could be the hop.
I really
right, because I've seen that aspect about dry hopping when it came to like, they did a test with like the test beer was like a Coors Light or a Coors Banquet or something like that. And they noticed an uptick in diacetyl as well when they dry hopped versus just regular. So it was like, I think it's an interesting concept. And like, I guess this is something to potentially look out for in terms of the next year. I'm guessing there's going to be a couple different articles written about this aspect of beer. Because I hadn't really heard of it before, you know, going to Skyland on Friday. So that, I guess it was something that I wanted to kind of bring up, you know, and see if anybody else had heard about it or experienced something like it.
No, I can't say that I have until now. Well,
there you go.
All right. I'm going to launch into PowerPoint about Glassware. I'll share my screen, and let me do that first. Share this. Share. All right. So, glassware and cleaning. How not to fuck up perfectly good beer. Let me see here. Where is my
Screen.
from Kurt's slide? Here we go. All right. So, my club president of my old club made this jokey thing here about this glass ruins your beer. It doesn't ruin your beer, but it often doesn't do it any favors. So when we think about our entire brewing process, we put so much time and effort into every step, from recipe design to sourcing our ingredients, especially us gluten-free brewers. We put a lot of work in on that. The brew day, you're looking at all your times, all your temperatures, all of your sanitation, fermentation. Some beers, you're going that extra step and you're aging and conditioning with oak, or maybe you're even adding sour bugs to them. Hold on.
Have you turned the sound off?
No.
So you've gone this far, and then let's do an example. This is from before I got my diagnosis. So which pour did the brewer here intend? And so you've got a perfect pour and clear glassware. I took this picture when this beer was 5 years old. This is a barrel-aged bourbon. It's a imperial red ale that Widmer ages in bourbon casks. It was a 5-year-old beer. Look how beautifully it poured into that teku glass. And then, did he intend that glass, or did he intend some dickhead to dump it into a dirty juice glass? I'm going to tell you right now that the beer on the right scored very poorly on Untapped. That guy thought it was a terrible beer that he drank. I don't think it was his fault, the brewer. So, beer drinking is a multisensory experience. Glassware is definitely going to impact that in a lot of ways. Visually, with head retention and clarity. It impacts your olfactory senses with the malt and hop aromas, as well as esters and alcohols. Temperature. Your glassware has a lot to do with the temperature that you're going to be tasting that beer at. So this is a mistype by me. It says tulip or zoku. That's a teku glass. That was a typo I did 2 years ago. This is the old version of the presentation. So these tulip glasses and zoku glasses can accentuate high ester or ABV beers. They're good for Belgians, barrel-aged beers, and sours. The Spiegel Au IPA glass is a really good IPA glass. It accentuates the hop aromas, shoots them straight up your nose, and every time you take a drink, that ridged base of the glass actually regenerates the head by sloshing it around and releases more aroma up into your nose. Same thing with the stout glass. It accentuates malt aromas and it regenerates the head every time you take a sip. The Pilsner glass is the one that I showed a little bit earlier with JP's beer. It's got a real narrow column that highlights its clarity, and it can focus the aroma toward your nose. And then a beer stein is a big, thick glass that leaches some of the chill away from the beer, and that warming of the beer can really accentuate those round malt flavors, especially Munich malt. And it also allows the CO2 to dissipate for a big, creamy, smooth mouthfeel. One very important and overlooked thing about glassware is people ignore their cleaning regimen. And this was a topic a couple of times I saw on the page, the Facebook page, the last week. Dish soap is mainly a surfactant, which means that it spreads across the top of a fluid and affects the surface tension, and it will kill your head retention. If you've seen those dish soap commercials where they drop some Dawn dish detergent in a greasy pan and all the grease spreads and dissipates, that same soap will do the same thing if it's in your beer glass or clinging to the sides of your beer glass and wipe out the foam of your beer. Dishwasher detergent will do a similar thing. It leaves that film and residue, makes cloudy glasses with lots of, last night's dinner sprayed upon the glass, which leaves nucleation points. That dirty juice glass that I showed the Widmer Burr coming from, that probably was a dishwasher glass. It looked like it, and it will kill your head retention. So we already use PBW in our fermenters. It's a great cleaner. You already own it. It does have a heavy surfactant in it, but you can rinse that out really well. Just like you don't see your Croissant disappear off of your glass carboy, you won't see your head disappear off of your beer glasses. And it's not cheap, but you probably already have it. Another popular cleaner is BGC. It's called Beer Glass Cleaner. It's designed to just clean beer glasses. It maintains head retention very well. Excuse me. It's inexpensive and it's pretty accessible. You can get it at like a restaurant supply store like Cash and Carry or at your local homebrew store. One of the cons to that is it's just another cleanser that you have to buy, and we buy a lot of cleansers and sanitizers doing what we do. And over time, I have noticed that it will leave some residue. A third option is called Beer Clean. I've found that on Amazon, and it's pretty good stuff. It's a 3-step process. People use it professionally to clean, and then you'll have a rinse that has no chemical in it, and finally a sanitized step. It has great clarity, great head retention, eliminates all those nucleation points, but you do have to give it a pretty solid soak, and it's a little time intensive and it's a little bit expensive, but the serving size packets that it comes in are really handy. So look into that one. So some of the best practices that we can share would be to use an appropriate glass to the style. If you can only source straight side pint glasses and maybe some tulips, that'll get you by. Use straight side pint glasses for your typical American, non-craft type styles, or, maybe like your basic ales and lagers, and use a tulip for something that's kind of estery, like maybe your Belgians, or even if you've got a heavy stout that you want to, kind of church it up a little bit, you can use your tulip and get by there. But branch out and try some new designs. Real style-specific glasses can really accentuate those flavors that the brewer intended. And then establish a good cleaning routine. What I do is I take all my glasses after I use them, and I put them in the garage. And then Saturday morning, I'll go through and clean every glass I used. So that way I'm not spending a ton of time dedicated to beer glass maintenance. And then drip dry, never wipe. You don't want to put any lint inside the glass that doesn't need to be there. And then if you're using something like fabric softener on your dish towels, you're probably going to go ahead and wipe that into your glass and cause problems. So just let it drip dry. And then, like I said, Saturday mornings I clean my glasses. And then definitely get one of these. This is a 3-tub, brush system. You're going to want to get that. I'm just kidding. That would be a heavy investment, but that's what a lot of, like that bottle washer type of thing. And that was it that I had for this. That was all for the topic of glass maintenance. If anybody has any of their own best practices they'd like to share on glass cleaning and maintenance, mainly just don't use your dish soap in your beer glasses.
We use a bottle brush at home, and we usually have somewhere between 3 or 4 glasses every single morning, so we usually have enough to clean. And that's usually because we're actually switching between different types of beer glasses. So usually I have 1 or 2 different styles. I'll start with like a Pilsner glass or like, you know, the Boston Lager glass, and then I'll switch to the snifter or the tulip or something like that.
That Boston Lager glass is one of the best glasses you can use for a malt forward beer. It is so good on like a Vienna lager or like a Marzen type of that type of malt forward beer. It produces such a like smooth round malt character when you're drinking out of it. It's great.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. And then did you see the post that I did about an hour before the meeting started? We had champagne this morning.
Yeah.
And one glass was beer clean and one actually wasn't. And that was really interesting. And actually when Dominique talked me through it, she's like, yeah, when I rinsed with water on high, high pressure and just, kind of swirled that around and then dumped it out. And the other one I used the bottle brush with. And it was like, I'm like, were you trying to like make an example or what's the deal here? Because like that's like exactly what I typically see.
Yeah, my wife gets real sick sometimes of me leaving beer glasses out, so she'll throw them in the dishwasher, and I feel like it's out of spite.
It's like, this is what you get.
Exactly, and then I have to wash it again anyway. I still have to put it into PBW or beer glass cleaner or. The beer line cleaner works really well too, but that's expensive stuff. Like I've only done it like if I was already circulating that stuff through my beer lines, I might put some glasses in it and then rinse them off, and it's like, wow, that cleaned really well. But you definitely don't want anything sticking to the sides of your glasses. And I see a lot of like, hey, check out my beer pour glass, glass shots, beer porn. Instagram and stuff like that, and you can tell when it's a dirty glass immediately, and it's a little cringy. It's like,
true. Well, one of the ones that I think is really funny is like all these hazy beers where it's like they pour it in like one of those no stem wine glasses or like those like weird like where it has like a punch bowl at the top, like weird IPA glasses, but there's literally no foam at the top, and it's just all juice looking stuff, and I'm just like.
Yeah, and it's got bubbles clinging to the side of the glass half the time, and it's just
nasty.
And you'll notice it also is a real good way for you to tell if you've got some problems in your system. Like an infected beer will look like shit in a clean glass. It might throw some haze at you. It might have some weird bubble formation of its own going on. And you'll notice right away, like, oh, something's off about that pour. And then you'll go to drink it. You're like, oh, something's off about that beer. That's why, like those wild yeasts will throw some real weird carbonation and haziness to a beer sometimes. And you'll be like, that's a good indication something's off with that beer. Or maybe something's off with your carbonation. You're not quite fully carved yet. You haven't let all the shit settle out of your beer, and you're drinking a big old glass of Trub. It will look like garbage in a clear glass that you might not otherwise notice.
Actually, I was one of the recipients 2 summers ago. I think it was 2 summers ago, actually. Yeah, 2 summers ago of the green grapefruit IPA that got released by Ghostfish. And how I could tell was
green, meaning it wasn't ready yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that too. Like you had a 4-pack of Trub, like basically. Yeah. And then Bottle Shop up in Vancouver, Washington had to return 2 cases of it.
Wow.
I got it too, and I wrote them a nastygram saying, what the? And they said, next time you're in, we'll give you a 4-pack. And it's like, I don't go to Seattle. Like, thank you, but Kale, pay attention. He's right there. You get my 4-pack.
Yeah, there you go.
Kale's right there in the brewery now.
New stuff. They've been doing some really cool stuff with like the Killer Ale and then the Pink Boots. And then they did a couple Bretts and Saisons. I was really impressed by that too.
Yeah.
I'm like, I need to make a trip to the PNW, man.
Hey, what's up? What are you guys talking about?
We're talking about there was 2 years ago a green batch of grapefruit IPA that was released by Ghostfish that was pretty much mostly True.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, but then we were talking about how
it looked just wrong in the glass immediately.
Yeah, well, Ghostfish had reached back out to them and had basically said that he has a 4-pack waiting for him, and so we're saying you should pick it up for him, Kale.
There it is. I took a picture of it and sent it right to him, but I knew immediately, putting it into a clear glass, it's like there's something wrong about that beer. It had weird nucleation points all through it. Like, that was a perfectly clean beer, and you could see hop flakes churning around in it, and it was, yeah.
That's nasty. Oh man.
That was rough.
Nasty. Damn, you nasty.
See, I thought that I had just gotten something from the bottom of the fermenter, but it looks like the whole run must have been like that, because I've heard multiple people now complain about that.
Yeah, that happened in one batch, one or two. I don't know. I mean, like, because the thing is like, you know, when you have, like, so I've been in there when they've had all 3 60-barrel fermenters with grapefruit in them. So
this is another one that I decanted. So the top, so the big glass is the beer that I decanted off.
Right.
And this is what was left in the bottom.
Yeah.
Just straight yeast. Like, it was so bad.
He got 3/4 of a beer, people.
Rough stuff. But I mean, that's what that beer normally looks like. That was the 4-pack that I had before it. So tell right away when something's wrong.
Yeah, no, it's straight up. I felt really sad because I had gone into I had bought that one in the brewery. Yeah. Yeah, so that was a tough. Like, I brought the 4-pack in there, so yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know how that whole batch got out of QC, but it managed to.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, like, they a lot of times have 3 of their 60-barrel fermenters with grapefruit IPA in them. So yeah. It's like you could have just accidentally hooked it up to the wrong one, and then a whole run goes out. Because, like, I've been there on a canning day, and it's like, it's organized chaos for the most part, because it's just you're literally going through like 30 barrels in one go. Yeah. So you like better have some good music on. You better have stretched. You better stretch halfway through and at the end, because like it's a lot of repetitive motion.
Yeah, I think that I don't know. I think I think that these, what is it, the 60 BBLs they have, I think that almost all of them are grapefruit IPA. Like that's
it's still their best seller.
They have going all the time.
Yep.
And they don't have their own canning line right now, so they have to wait for the canners to show up.
Canning.
Yeah, so they're going to get their own canning line pretty soon, so they don't have to wait. Mm-hmm. And this place is like filling up. It's super full in here right now. Yeah.
Tell them about the club. Evangelize.
Yeah. All right.
I didn't have anything else, even for club stuff or for anything else. We might end at 3 o'clock for the first time ever, unless anybody has stuff to add.
I was just going to say, if next time I'm down that way, maybe it'll be the next anniversary party. I'll see if I can bring down some sample packs of beer line cleaner. This is the stuff that for you guys, but I sell this stuff because I sell industrial chemicals for breweries and food plants. So, they come in a box of 250 in a pack, and they're awesome beer line cleaner. It actually changes color as it runs to tell you when it's clean.
Oh,
it'll go from yellow or green to purple as it gets clean. So
and it won't chew up my pond pump that I recirculate my beer line cleaner through?
No, it's got some sodium hydroxide and hydrogen peroxide in it, and persulfium sulfate or whatever, that's the purple stuff. But it's mild enough that it's not going to damage the pump.
Yeah, it's not like super low or high pH.
No. Yeah.
It's got sodium hydroxide, I'm guessing high pH.
Well, it's 12.5 if mixed properly.
It's up there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. CIP you're doing 13.5. So.
So I've got something. My post didn't really get a lot of attention. Maybe I should have tagged like everybody in the club, but I still am trying to get people to send beers to NHC so that I don't have to send all the beers. So, and I think it would be great to see a different, interpretation of how to brew some styles. So, trying to get maybe like a couple people to send a couple cases. of different beers to Rhode Island for June. That would be the end of June for National Homebrew Convention.
All right. I can send you a list of the most popular contributors to the page, because Facebook provides me that. And then I know some of the more prolific brewers would be, the four of us here plus Ed, and then Ben Fowler and Matt Sourwine are prolific brewers. I know they do a lot of brewing, and they might be interested in doing that. But it's hard moving beer across the country.
I know
international border is tough.
Or out of
impossible.
I'm in Southern California, so that's like the furthest away I could be, like 3,000 miles exactly, pretty much. So I'm trying not to send that much stuff over there.
What's up, Kale?
What's the cost on shipping a case or any kind of beer across?
I think you got to ask yourself, what does this club
that?
mean to you? You know what I mean? I think that's a better question. Is not ask what the club can do for you, but what you can do for the club,
Well, I'm definitely drawing in a line for myself of personally going to Rhode Island.
Hey, you know what? It's worth it because I will be like edifying the shit out of everybody who sends it. You guys get a podium of being the go-tos when it comes to gluten-free beers. You know, the accolades shall follow.
Nice.
And you're presenting there again, right, Bob? Is that true?
Yes. So once again, you will have a stage to have your name exalted upon.
What topic did you ultimately decide to go with?
Which malts to choose.
Okay.
Yeah, choosing the best malts for taste, texture, and color.
Good. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Did Ed share with you? He's not ready to share it publicly yet, but did he show you some of his photos that he's been working on?
I'll be actually taking some of those photos with me and using them in my slides. So I'm sparging, but wow, what's that?
That is Ghostfish Watchstander in the Spiegel Au Stout glass.
Looks great, man.
I brought glassware to this thing.
Nice.
I always thought it would be a hilarious Portlandia sketch, like if a dude goes to like a tap room and then he busts out like his like violin case of like specialty glassware for every beer that he orders.
Oh hell yeah!
Because I could totally see a dude like going into Beer Mongers or something and being that dude. Like I've maybe considered how I could do that.
We really, Dominique actually had an idea earlier this morning because we're trying to do like kind of a push for the brewery for Celiac Awareness Month. And we were like, what would be a funny video that could like be shared a lot? And it was like, potentially something about like, didn't you know that beer can be gluten-free too? Right. And like something like that. And it's, because of the awareness aspect. So we're trying to think of something along those lines. I love the idea. That sounds great.
Yeah, that dude. Excuse me, guys.
I got a question. Can you? I was, the first time at Ghostfish, and I was like, should I go get some fancy microphone? Should I get a webcam? So, can you guys hear us? Okay, or does it suck?
There's a little bit of lag, and I don't know if it's my connection or yours, but I haven't heard Peter or Bob and Dominique lagging, but I've heard lag coming when you talk. Like, you know how sometimes mine will turn kind of robot?
Yeah.
It's happening to you. I don't know if it's because the public Wi-Fi or...
Yeah, I might have to go bump up their internet speed here.
We just have to get hardline connected.
Do you have, are you using any kind of microphone device, or you're just using...
Just a computer. So
audio?
I was about getting a mic. You have your own separate microphone, don't you?
Yeah, Ed bought that for the club. It's just like a Jabra. It's supposed to be Bluetooth, but I've never gotten it to work on Bluetooth. I just plug it into the computer.
You'll get a delay with Bluetooth anyway.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I don't do that then.
I know we talked about this at the start of the meeting. I don't think everyone was here, but so for May, I don't know. I guess that's kind of up in the air, right? with the.
Yeah,
the
I haven't decided because I understand that Bob and Ed are talking about coming up here.
Yeah.
But I was talking.
Birthday at Evasion on the 25th.
You've got a serious like Magnum PI flow going. I think you need to just shave the beard immediately and leave the mustache.
Yeah.
And the shirt half buttoned is, you've got it. It's there. Yeah, I'm sending you a Detroit Tigers hat in the mail.
No, I mean, I think you need to ask yourself the question is how many buttons would Bob unbutton?
Maybe Magnum PI would be better with you being the character because it sucks otherwise.
There you go. There you go.
Okay,
It's
so
a commanding force.
So you guys were planning on coming up, but at the same time, I was thinking about going to Seattle to see my brother who's shipping out in the Navy to Rhode Island, oddly enough. He won't be there in time for NHC. He's not getting there until August. He's got 2 months of Navy school in Virginia before that. But yeah, anyway, I was thinking about going up and seeing him Memorial Day and helping out Kale with the Seattle stuff and hanging out with him and doing that. And then maybe Ed and Bob can run this meeting while I'm up there with Kale doing that meeting, and we can kind of spread the love. But I haven't decided fully what to do there yet because also Stuart Cole is coming down the week or so before that from Canada, and he was just like, well, maybe we can have, since it's Memorial Day that one weekend, maybe we can move it ahead a week and I'll be able to attend. And I said, well, that's also a good idea. So.
Yeah, that idea.
My preference, not that I have any weight to pull, but is to do it on the last Sunday because I've already got
that room
kind of taken up, right? So I wouldn't want to have to go back and do a switcheroo on them. So, but I don't know if they have anything going on most Sundays up here or not. So.
Well, I don't think that this meeting here could be more sparsely attended than it was today. I'm the only one here, a groundbreaker. This is the first time that I've been the only one here. The last time, at least Kale was here because of Timber Sounders.
Yeah.
The last time I got stood up like this, and James was here, but the sun came out in Portland. Oh, somebody's buying 2 4-packs of my beer.
There we go.
But
just make sure they save at least one for me for end of May.
Okay, we'll have to talk with them about that because I looked in there and there's only like 15 or so cases left.
Jesse had said he had pulled one aside, but just making sure.
Double check.
Yeah. In fact, I just looked in the fridge and I saw a 2-base, and I don't know if that was left here for me because it was sitting with all of this Peter Corrin beer. So I need to ask Jesse if that was supposed to be for me because I would like to have a 2-base. I've been wanting to get their beer.
There we go. Awesome.
Where's that brewery?
Australia, right?
Australia, yeah. Yeah, Richard was up here just the other day. I missed him. I wasn't able to come over, but that would be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
All righty. Anything else, friends? I think, we'll talk about the Memorial Day weekend thing, but I don't see a problem with holding a meeting during Memorial Day. It's not like I said, it's not like fewer people are going to show up than they did today. This is, at least Ed and Bob will be here and bring my brother to some kale.
Already be there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Are you coming up, Dominique, when Bob comes up?
What? Yeah.
She's on the flight manifest.
Do you have a topic?
What will the topic be?
Yeah.
Well, I was pushing for the mead guy to come talk about session meads, but that might not be the best time to have that meeting.
True.
Well, you really think it's not going to be that well attended?
Well, we could, because honestly, if anybody's willing to do it on the Saturday there's like we're trying to brew like an old world style at Evasion on that Saturday, and if people want to actually come out to Evasion, that could be fun too.
I think Kale has a problem with changing the date because he has that room booked at Ghostfish for not just the weekend, but specifically for this time slot.
Oh, okay.
And Ghostfish is being generous with that room because I think they can use it for other things.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they use it for events, but I mean, on a Sunday afternoon, I don't think it's really that big of an issue. I mean, I'm just saying it's the first time I've been here this month, so yeah, I want to have a couple in a row where I
you don't want to have one meeting and then tell them, all right, we're changing things on you.
Yeah. Well, because I was gonna have it in March, and it ended up that they had Pink Boots Society was up here, right? So I don't want to have a situation where I'm doing schedule, roulette,
Yeah, definitely. I understand wanting to establish consistency with them.
Yeah. Right.
So you're trying to get like people in the community come out to this meeting room. And do you have RSVP?
What's that?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so this is trying to be like a meetup group.
Yeah, they're going to meet up like we do here. They're going to meet up at Ghostfish. And if we can get people to start doing this at Holly Daily and at Rolling Mill and at New Era, like that'd be awesome. Like if we had 11 satellite clubs all dialing in, I think that would be a super cool thing. And Kale took it upon himself to make the first move.
I think it's a work in progress. To me, it's like, so I think some things work really good on the web conference and some things like not so good, right? So I guess that we'll just have to see how things go to see what the best format is for the meeting. You know what I mean?
I would be all in favor of everybody doing their own social thing for like the first 20 minutes of it.
Yeah.
And then honing in on 20, 30 minutes of presentation time, and then 20, 30 minutes of, hey, what's up, everybody, type of, community bullhorning like we're doing now.
I was talking to Dina here, and I was like, I don't really want to just sit and stare at the computer the whole time, right?
It does suck like, hi, stranger. We're going to ignore each other and watch this device.
Who are you? All right. Okay. Yeah. So I like that format. I think that's great.
No, I think that would be awesome if, I think it could work really well, especially if we start to spread it out. Like if we could get guy in Ohio, Neil Rupp, to do like the Ohio or the Oryx, scene, because he's in Columbus. So I think it's equidistance between Rolling Mill and Oryx. And if we could get, it'd be awesome if we could get Australians to do it, but sadly, it's like 5 a.m. Monday there right now or something. It's a really bad time for them. And the same thing with Peter Fold in Hungary. It's like 10:30 at night or 12:30 in the morning, and it's not convenient to him. So the time zone thing becomes a problem. But for U.S. and Canada based, I think that we could pull off some cool, like, socially integrating the whole, there's 10 or 12 or 13 dedicated gluten-free breweries. If we started getting little groups to meet up at those, that'd be great.
I like it.
Yeah, and it helps the breweries. Like they get to get, inroads to the home brewers and share and exchange information, and we get to be better brewers, and they get to spread. Whoa, okay, so I'm figuring out the layout of the house. So that doorway over there wraps around to, all right, that was a little trippy.
We got the Stones poster, we got the Bob Marley poster, we got the paintings. We got it.
Hey, Bob, where are you brewing just for Divine Science? Are you guys brewing out of your house or in your garage or what?
Contract.
Yeah, I'm brewing at home right now with the Grainfather.
Oh, nice. Sweet. Awesome.
Yeah,
he's only got to do 6 of those to make a barrel, and then he's got to do 60 more of those to fulfill his Disney contract.
Wow,
right.
a lot.
That's
a lot of
why we're
grandfathers.
going on a commercial system instead
You're
of.
up there.
Yeah, I was joking.
Yeah.
No, this is more fun.
Yeah, this is a lot more fun.
So, Kale, to answer that question, he's got a contract brewery he's doing it at that
right on.
enforces all of his cleanliness standards for the gluten stuff.
That's what I thought. Okay, cool.
Excuse me.
Gluten is cleanliness.
I guess good commercial news was Holidaily expansion is huge. That's 10,000 barrels a year is going to be enormous for them. And then Buckwheat starting his commercial brewery. It looks roughly the size of Groundbreaker's system. I don't know about fermenters, but the brew stand looks roughly the same size. So that's kind of exciting stuff.
That's really cool. And it's in NorCal, right?
Yeah, it is. So have you tasted that beer, guys, Californians?
I've actually never had that beer once.
I've never heard, It's never come down.
Shelly bid on and won a trip to San Francisco for us for our 15-year wedding anniversary this summer. So I'm going to see if I can track it down and try it.
Great. Yeah, we're probably we're trying to be in the Bay on like June 22nd.
You have family there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
We're gonna be there in June.
Cool. Well, if there's no objections, I'll go ahead and say goodbye to everybody, and we can go about our Sundays. I've got some kebabs I need to grill.
Got it, man.
All right, man.
Everybody.
Okay. All right. See you, buddy. Talk to you later. Thanks for everything.